His mum had an addiction and was in and out of rehab. He was living with his grandparents, which he hated. And then he just turned and he looked me in the eyes and he started crying. And he said, "Ian, help me." He said, "Kintsugi." I said, "I've never heard of it." But when I looked into it, so for those who don't know, Kintsugi is that Japanese craft where they take broken pottery and they put it back together using a precious metal like gold. And the repaired product is far more beautiful, far more valuable than the original piece. Crying with gratitude. I can't explain it. But for the hot water, for the hospital and the medical system we have in Australia. And that attitude continued on all the way through that.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. Most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Today's guest decided to build a movement to change that. My guest is Ian Westmoreland. He spent more than 4 decades working in the telecommunications and energy sectors across Australia and New Zealand, mostly as an IT project manager. But in 2013, he recognised what became a critical turning point that led him to step away from corporate life and focus on community impact. In 2018, he founded Mentoring Men, a non-profit organisation that provides free one-to-one mentoring for Australian men who are facing life challenges. The program has since grown into a national movement promoting well-being, resilience, and authentic connection. He also founded Kintsugi Heroes, a storytelling platform that shares real-life stories of people who've overcome adversity. In recognition of his work supporting men and young people, Ian was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia in the 2024 King's Birthday Honours. Ian, welcome to the podcast.
G'day, Doug. Good. Thank you for the opportunity to chat to you.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And now, setting up these organisations, Mentoring Men to start with, I guess I've heard the story myself before, listening to other podcasts that you've been on, but please share with the guests, what was this amazing turning point in your life?
Well, I guess the first turning point was in 2013, I was increasingly thinking there's more to life than just making money and delivering software changes. I was working as an IT project manager. And on the 10th of September 2013, I got on the train to come to work. I continued to read a book that my youngest daughter had given me. And what I read that morning transformed the thinking for the rest of my life. In May 2014, I quit my high-paid job as an IT manager to start giving back to the community. A strong focus just on doing that. I started off mentoring kids in high schools through the Raise Foundation in Sydney high schools. In addition to that, I signed up to mentor kids in primary schools as well, and even got involved in a third mentoring program aimed around just supporting the community in general. In 2018, I was mentoring a young guy in one of the Sydney high schools, and he shared with me that his father had suicided. His mum had an addiction and was in and out of rehab. He was living with his grandparents, which he hated. And then he just turned and he looked me in the eyes and he started crying. And he said, "Ian, help me." And what can you do? As part of that, I would meet this guy once a week at the high school for an hour, and we would just talk and maybe go for a walk. I debriefed with the program counsellor at the end of the mentoring session and explained what had gone on. Everything's confidential other than what you share with the counsellor. Explaining what was going on, looking for advice, and she asked me, "You okay?" And I just started crying over the situation as well. And I was flat for a couple of months. And then I realised I would benefit from having a life mentor, just like the mentoring I've been provided to all these kids in primary school and high school. I should explain, when you say the word mentor, I define it two different types of mentoring: business mentoring, life mentoring. Most people default to business mentoring. And business mentoring is someone with acquired skills and knowledge and experience who guides and directs, advises someone else. And that's nothing to do with what I was doing. In my view, life mentoring is predominantly listening, 90% listening, supporting, encouraging. People aren't broken. They don't need fixing. They don't need us to give advice. We haven't got their lived experience. But it's incredibly powerful when you know you're being listened to. So after a couple of months, I looked around for the nearest organisation that provided life mentoring to men. And surprisingly and incredibly disappointingly, I couldn't find any organisation like that. So it motivated me to start mentoring men, and we launched in November 2018. So it's a free program. We train up men, volunteer men like me, to support other men going through life challenges. So that was what the trigger for starting mentoring men.
Yeah, beautiful. And so I've heard your story. You're talking about reading the book on the train, and there's because the podcast is about intuition, and with that, I like to bring synchronicities in our lives in. Could you just continue to tell that story a little bit, like the significance of when you were reading that book on the train, the timing of your life, and what the book said?
Well, okay. So and I'm not sure if it's intuition. It could be. I feel everything I do is secular, but I feel, for me, I'm a Christian, and there's something external to me that is shining the light down a path, and I can choose whether I go down there or not. So we moved. I've got 4 kids. Early on in our marriage, we really struggled financially. I'd be working multiple jobs. I'd get home, my wife would go off to Denny's restaurant, and she was cleaning houses. That was the sort of situation we're in. But later on, that situation improved. I've never been a multimillionaire, but we'd acquired sufficient material possessions, and that was no longer a major issue for us. So in 2013, as I've said, I thought, look, there's got to be more to life than just doing this. I'm working hard. I've always worked hard, but there's got to be more meaning to this. And then on the 10th of September 2013, that was a key date. I've got the book here, in fact. So what I read was a Christian book by Steve Furtick's Sun Stand Still. And on that day, the day is important, 10th of September 2013, he questioned the role of Christians in society. And he started listing these things, and I was ticking them off as I went along. And it's like, we feel like we're doing our part as long as we live decent lives. Tick. I was a bit of a rascal as a kid, but I was sort of living a decent life. Then he said, stay out of trouble, tick. Pay taxes, tick. Have babies, tick. I said, have 4. Make a living, and I've done that. Buy a boat. I even had a boat. And then he said, I mean, I'm reading this, hit age 59 and a half, collect retirement, die. So I've gone through all those. I was born on the 10th of March, 1954. I was 59 and a half to the day that I read that. Now, I've shared that hundreds of times, and people go, oh, coincidence, whatever. Up to them. But that, and like, I don't know whether you call this intuition, but it certainly got my attention. 2 days.
I would call it a synchronicity, and I got like tingles all over me. And I've heard you say it several times before on podcasts, so it was nothing new for me to hear it. I got tingles and all over my skin. I would call it a synchronicity, where there is something shining a light somewhere. Someone wanted you to, those words, to jump out on the page to you. If I'd have read it, it may not have jumped out in the slightest, but you read it and it jumped out.
Yeah. Well, I checked with Americans. So you retire at 59 and a half. No one else had ever heard of that before. And so they don't retire at 59 and a half. And then 2 or 3 days later, my wife and I went out a Saturday morning up to Macca's to have a coffee. sitting at the table. She sees a woman on another table with a husband, and she knows the woman. She goes over there and started chatting. When she came back, I said, "Who's that?" And it turned out it was the scripture teacher at my daughter who gave me the books school. So this lady taught scriptures to my daughter. So I went home and just said hello. And what came from this woman was this incredible goodness, kindness, and she shared a couple of things. So this is 2 or 3 days after this event. The first thing was she and her husband were supporting a program for young mums, teenage unmarried mums, essentially. And they would just give them love. They'd put on brunch and they'd just be there to support them. And they couldn't keep up with demand. And I said, well, I've got this message to do something. I don't know what it is, but to make some more meaningful thing in my life. So we signed up to fund that program for several years afterwards. That program's still running. The second thing she mentioned to me was the Raise mentoring course. So my wife and I went along and trained to become Raise mentors. And all the way along these steps, I met, so the first one, 59.5 on the 10th of September, meeting that woman. And I shared before about this young guy I was mentoring in high school. And throughout the last 12 years of being a full-time volunteer, these things just keep coming up. And I like the I can't even say it, but the
synchronicity, yeah.
Synchronicity. But so I've got a mind that's open to these sorts of things. And, maybe we'll get into it later on, but I've just come out of a 3-year cancer journey. And basically in December and February, the medical fraternity said, look, there's nothing we can do for you. So stage 4 cancer, there's nothing we can do. We've got no other thing that we can offer you. And about 4 weeks ago, I was advised I'm in remission. So all through that journey, I just powered on. I kept doing Kintsugi Heroes stuff. I just love life, full of gratitude. And I can't explain it. It doesn't make sense logically. But here I am today and still loving life. So.
I love that you just said it doesn't make sense logically, because there's men sitting out there listening now to your story and they go, why the heck did that happen to Ian? Why has he had all this stuff fall in his lap and his life feels good and all that? Why can't I find those sort of things? You took action. Like you talking about there's something there shining a light on things for you to see. I'll take it a step further, and I don't want anyone to feel like they need to believe what I believe, but I believe there is invisible, and you said something there you can't see, so you don't know what it is, benevolent forces who love us, and they're constantly trying to get messages to us, tell us things, show us things. And why are they trying to show us? My feeling would be, 1, to help benefit us, 2, to help us benefit others. It's because we're all interconnected. And the story you told there of that book, you're 59.5 to the day, and it's just a slap in the head. It's like, turn 59.5 and die. And you're like, I've just started living. Like, I've been working for 40 years. Like, I am not going to die. Like, and that's not the message that was trying to get you. It was like, do something. And you had a mini revelation, an epiphany, some sort of sense inside, whatever happened, and off you went. And because you started following it, these benevolent forces are like, oh, we got a live one over here. This one out of the 7 million that I'm looking after finally did something. I need some help. Let's throw some other stuff in his lap. And so now Ian's had these other things dropped in his lap because he's a goer. He's got the message. He can see the light. And so other things drop in your lap. You meet people, things happen. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, look, the last 12 years have been incredibly fulfilling. I learned so much from these young guys that I mentored. I could give you story after story of the wisdom that I picked up from that. From all of the last 12 years, I've become, I'm confident to say I've become a much more loving, less judgmental person. I've learned my ignorance in some ways. As a society, we focus on symptoms that person's homeless, that person's got an addiction or whatever. We're not good at trying to understand the underlying causes of these things. We go straight into judgment, and no one sets out to become an addict. But what we've seen through the Kintsugi Hero stories, there often could be sexual abuse. There could be some other reason that's led them to that. And coming back, I love a lot of Mark Twain quotes, but one that in fact, I've got on a presentation I do. The two most important days in your life are the day you're born and then the day you work out why. And for me, 10th of September 2013 was one of the why things for me. And it's been an incredible ride, and hopefully there's a lot more to go, but what will be will be.
So that Mark Twain quote is just sense of purpose, like the day you work out what is, and they say that people who have a sense of purpose enjoy their life more. It's less likely to fall into addiction, less likely to, have things that, not that they won't have it, but, or if something happens, they're more likely to be able to see a way through it because they don't see it as a bigger problem as others.
Yeah. So can I share a story that really impacted me, and it helped shape where I was going and my understanding of where I was going. So my wife and I are keen bike riders, and so we jumped on this, what looked like a Greek pirate ship, and we went around the Greek islands with a bunch of other people on bikes. And the boat would stop at an island, unload all the bikes, and we would follow the tour guide on his e-bike. This young guy on an e-bike, we're pedaling, but anyway. And we'd come to this island, and we'd climb up a bit of a mountain to a vantage point where we could look out over another island. He gathers us around him. And he starts to tell us the success story of Aristotle Onassis. Now, most of the young people wouldn't know who Aristotle Onassis is, but he shared that Onassis and his family were at one point poor, impoverished. So he started making money in the black market with tobacco. And then he had some sort of innovation around packaged cigarettes and made a lot more money. And then he got into shipping, and he became the richest man in the world at one point. Many people didn't know, the Americans didn't know who he was until he then pointed out that he married JFK's widow, Jackie Onassis. And he told it like a success story. And at the end of it, he said he was rumoured, Onassis was rumoured to have said, people say money can buy love. I want to tell you it's not true. I'm the richest man in the world, and I've never found true love. And I couldn't help myself. I put up my hand and I said, look, I want to question, you've told this as a story of Greek success. You've got a guy who's invented a product that's killed millions of people and caused untold damage to millions more, and never found true love. I would argue that some blue-collar worker with loving relationships is far more successful than Onassis is or was. And when I got back to Australia, jet-lagged, I woke up and I thought, I put things into pictures, and what's our best life? I came up with my definition where we use our skills and experiences to positively impact the world. On the other side of the diagram, okay, we're born, and I believe we start heading towards the best life. But there's a word map above that of the things that happen to us. We get abused, we get sick, we have relationships fall apart, we get impacted by social media. And one of the big things through marketing campaigns or whatever, we get driven to this materialistic life. We lose sight of what our best life, where we're going to get fulfillment, and we go down a path that's almost we've been driven to do for external selfish purposes. And I say to people, I did this diagram for my benefit, but just for 10 seconds, please just take a step back. Think, what would your best life look like? Are you heading down that way at the moment? And I've got the quote I mentioned before, the Mark Twain quote. I've got a few others there. He was so poor, all he had was money. And one of our Kintsugi Heroes rugby league legend in Sydney shared, "I'd rather have a purpose than a Porsche." And so I encourage people maybe to think about their best life. And I understand, like, still I was poor, we had to make money, we're doing multiple jobs and all that sort of stuff. But I believe every one of us has a meaningful purpose, and it's where we're going to get fulfillment. And I just challenge people maybe to have a think about that.
Yeah. It's, I guess, I can equate it a little bit too. If you work for an employer and you put in the extra effort, you ask questions, you make suggestions, the employer's like, "Oh, this is a handy little worker. I want to keep them." So they offer you extra incentive. They's like, "Would you like to go away for a week and do this training course and get this new skill?" Oh, wow, and so they're being sort of groomed up because the boss knows they're going to do something with that information when they come back. And so it's in a similar way, our invisible employer out there, whoever that may be, sees us, same thing, has a sense of purpose. We're putting in the extra effort, and they're like, "Oh, I can't sort of say in Ian's ear, would you like to have this extra training? The course that you said your wife and you went and did, for counsel, for mentoring, that was obviously benefited both of you. And, half an hour before you met that lady, neither of you were probably thinking about doing that, but this benevolent invisible force had you synchronistically come across this lady's path, and she spoke the words, like da da da, and like you have the thought, and you're thinking, that's my idea. I want to go and do it. And off we go. And our life seems so blessed. But it's not that different to an employer who you speak words with, because they can see your effort and they offer you reward. They offer you whatever you need. So life's wonderful when we put it together and we have that sense of purpose and we follow through.
Yeah. Doug, thanks for raising that. One of the points that came to mind when you talked about that was in the commercial world, the attitude I took to the team around me as well. They weren't resources, they were people. And we shared births and marriages and deaths through that process. And I don't know, I guess love is a soft term, but I left paid work 12 years ago. When I was in hospital, potentially dying last year, these same people reached out to me, gifts would arrive. I had a staying alive party 2 weeks ago, and these people turned up. So it's so important that we don't just treat people as a commodity, but treat them with love and respect, and do it because it's the right thing to do, but it also pays dividends. Generally, those people, well, they'll perform better. They'll want to be part of the team. But it's the right thing, and those connections, I'm still in contact. They still ask for advice on things. So I think we should treat people that way. In a lot of the corporate environments I was at, so I worked for some of the biggest companies in Australia in my IT management role, but there was a lack of authenticity. There was a facade that was often put on. It's almost like a competitive environment. In Kintsugi Heroes, our team is over 50 people, but there's a caring, nurturing environment, and people still feel encouraged to make suggestions. And Ian, I don't think that's the right, I think we can do better than that. Oh, fantastic, and it's that sort of attitude. If only more commercial organisations had that sort of attitude led from the top, they would be much more efficient organisations.
Yeah. So you bring up Kintsugi Heroes. Tell us how that was birthed and where it's going.
So at the end of 2021, mentoring them was booming. It was growing exponentially in every area. Number of people being trained, the finances, everything. And we had sufficient money to put in place a paid team. And whatever I do with a passion. I loved the work I was doing, but I was doing it 7 days a week, long hours a day. And my family getting a bit annoyed that's understated with what I was doing. I've got 13 beautiful grandkids, and it's like, well, sometimes I miss family functions because I had other work stuff to do. Anyway, so at the end of 2021, I stepped aside from mentoring men, put in place a team. And after 3 months off, I decided to progress an idea that came to me back in 1993. And just to set the scene, as a teenager, I suffered from a lot of lack of confidence, self-esteem. I remember setting a goal as a teenager, if I could just be average, how good would that be? And later on, I'd seen the power of storytelling, the Nelson Mandela type stories, to positively impact, to build that confidence that, well, look at what they've gone through. And in August 93, I still got the letter. I wrote to some community leaders saying, around this idea of using storytelling, getting, back then, I thought it had to be famous people who'd overcome adversity, share their stories to give hope and inspiration to the Ians of the world. One of the guys I wrote to was Dick Smith, who took the time to send me back a handwritten note. I said, Ian, this is a great idea. And then he said, you do it. And slide it off Dick Smith. And so it waited till the end of 2021. And I thought, I've got to do this. Now, by that stage, I built up a fairly strong network, particularly in the men's health space. And one of those guys came to me and said, Ian, I told him everyone what I was going to do. He said, I've got the name for your project. And I said, well, what is it? He said, Kintsugi. I said, I've never heard of it. But when I looked into it, so for those who don't know, Kintsugi is that Japanese craft where they take broken pottery and they put it back together using a precious metal like gold. And the repaired product is far more beautiful, far more valuable than the original piece. I'll repeat that, far more beautiful and valuable than the original piece.
And for those who aren't on YouTube, Ian was just holding up a piece of pottery that had the seams repaired with gold, or that, yeah.
And what a brilliant metaphor for helping people reframe and see the value in that lived experience, that addiction, that abuse, that trauma, relationship breakdown, grief, disability, and a whole bunch of other things. So Kintsugi highlights the value of the scars that we acquire over time. So my 3-year cancer journey, I've got physical scars as well as like a lot of lived experience of doing that. But it's giving a much better insight. There's a lot of value in going through that journey. So we record stories like what we're doing now, Doug, and we've done getting close to 400 now. And then we publish those stories through YouTube, through audio platforms, through radio platforms, through books, events, and stuff like that. There's one Kintsugi master in Australia, Judgmental. He actually runs these workshops, and we've got him to come in and run the workshops for some of the events that we're running.
Nice. So just tell me, with what you've just shared with us in the last 45 minutes or so, how, without feeling boastful, I know you'll probably be a bit like, oh, I don't want to say that. How does it make you feel? How does the last 12 years make you, Ian, feel?
Well, the first thing, I'm chuffed that I've become more loving, and it's I have more empathy for people going through difficult situations. If you were to say, look, Ian, there's a cancer journey, I would start to ask you questions that a lot of people just dodge away. Someone's going through a grief journey. It's interesting as a society. Sometimes we avoid talking to people when there's some challenges going on in their life. It could be a broken relationship. It could be the death of a close one or whatever. And at a point where people would probably more appreciate that connection. So it's given me that awareness of that. One of the things that I concern, and I said the majority of my time through the cancer journey was full of gratitude. But what will happen if I die? Will Kintsugi Heroes continue as a legacy? Not for some ego thing for me, but I see the benefits of what it is that we're doing. And and we looked at putting in place some things. I got a co-CEO, and yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question. How do I feel? Pride is it's not an ego thing, but I think the sense of actually making a positive impact on the world is a great feeling to have. And
Sense of
hopefully that impact. Yes, that's that fulfillment. Yeah.
Yeah. And does it, I guess if I said the word content?
Yes. There's worse things than dying. And I would die content, fulfilled.
I listened to a podcast about a year ago, and there was a Scottish neurologist interviewing an Austrian philosopher who was in his mid to late 70s. And the philosopher was talking about, people are always like, oh, you've got to find your perfect job and then it won't feel like work and you'll be happy all the time. And he said, bah humbug, I have gone down this road so many times. He said, like, feeling happiness is an emotion, and emotions are fleeting. They come and they go very quickly, whether it's an emotion we enjoy or one we don't enjoy. But then he said the word content. He said, I am now content with my life, and that feeling follows me, and I'm not striving for happiness. Because I think there's so many young people on social media these days, like pretending to be happy, posting videos or photos that are, faked or AI'd or whatever, or they did, they haven't, used Photoshop or something, but they made the scene look like they're really happy. And then other people are striving for this constantly. And it's just like you're dreaming. It's just, and you think before social media, we didn't run around and people are just wasting their time pretending they're happy and showing other people. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, look at me. I'm eating this meal, and I'm here. And it's almost like, as you said, it's a facade they put on, and other people feel, all it does is have other people feel, oh, my life's crap, I can't do that stuff. Can I give you a Christian perspective on what you just shared? I see joy and happiness, two totally different things. And to say we should always be happy is absolutely idiotic. We get sick with this whole bunch of we get abused, a whole bunch of bad stuff. So it makes sense that our happiness is going to oscillate depending on what happens to us and the circumstances we're in. The thing that causes me the greatest sadness at the moment is what's going on in the world, in America. All right. How can I be happy about that situation? In fact, I've had to stop watching it. But from a Christian perspective, we should always feel joyful. No matter what we go through, we feel this support, this unconditional loving support. And people can put their own thing around that. But so I feel there's an important role to feel joy despite the circumstances, but the happiness is an emotion that should fluctuate. And if we're just fooling ourselves, if we think we should be striving to be happy all the time.
Yeah, and all the social media, and like I say, like stop watching the thing. I was a bit shocked the other day. We had friends come over last weekend, and they usually like always watching the news kind of people. And the husband said to me, we were chatting about something what was going on in the world, and he goes, I don't watch the news anymore. And I'm like, wow, like I nearly gave him a clap because I haven't watched the news for a really long time. And I said to him, I don't watch it, either. I said, I've got 4 sons and my wife, and between them, if something goes on in the world that's worthy of me knowing about it, one of them will tell me. And then if I feel that, I need to know more about it, I'll go and search it out and read a little bit about it or something like that. And he goes, I'm the same. And he's got 4 sons, and he goes, yep, they tell me stuff, and I do exactly the same now. And I was so happy for him that he'd got to that point now of just like, I'm not watching that stuff anymore. It doesn't bring me joy, happiness. And it's impossible for it to be 100% true. And it doesn't mean, and even if like 10 journalists are all trying to bring 110% truth to the world, if they were, It's impossible for them to bring 100% truth because it's perspective. It depends what angle you're looking at the story from. And so, yeah.
Look, I think it's far worse the situation than what you said. There's people deliberately trying to distort the truth. And what's that happened? So it's driven through social media for these lies that have been told through media. It drives people further right or further left. And you look at potentially what could happen in America. And it's there's some people are so rusted on to the leader that if you were to say to them, what would you need to hear before you changed your opinion on the leader? Some of them would say, there's nothing you can tell me or show me that would change. So that's foolish. And to address that, I've got this model. You've got a wire that almost reaches a couple of extreme points, but doesn't. And the extreme point could be yes, no, it could be left, right, based on what we're talking about or any other thing. And there's a bead on the wire. And as you and I have this conversation, I may take on board what you're saying and move that bead one way or the other way, but it never fully gets to either extreme. So there's always the opportunity to have something adjusted. But we've lost that. Partly, in some cases, the leaders are driving, which the media, they're actually taking them over, getting rid of them, won't talk to us. So it's a pity. Social media is actually destroying a lot of the independent news content that we used to get. And because there's no money that the advertising's got. So I think it's a real issue. How do we find out the truth? And we don't know.
And it's all, like you just said, all of the news we hear, regardless of the source, is money driven.
Yeah.
It's now social media has a much higher percentage of news that people consume, but it's still driven. There aren't people on there like you volunteering their time unpaid to bring the news to the world. I mean, there'd be a handful compared to the rest. People are doing their YouTube channels unbiasedly, supposedly, so they can get views, so they can get paid ads. Like they're still doing it for a living, even if they try and concentrate on their content being genuine and non-biased. They're still on YouTube doing that to try and get views. And it's unfortunate that we're just a money-driven society.
And the ramifications could be huge. So one media outlet, for instance, does everything they can to deny climate change and other stuff. So if let's say climate change is real, we could be doing major the ramifications could be huge. So it's important that we get to the truth around these things. Anyway, let's avoid that conversation.
No, I hear you. And it's like I say, it's virtually impossible to know because we're so bombarded with half truths, 98% truths, 5% truths. And how do we now judge, what discern? And it's a very, very interesting world we're in.
Yeah. Look, in my own life, there's been things I've taken a stand on particular things and I've turned out to be wrong. And in hindsight, and happy to acknowledge that we don't always get things right. But again, there's this reluctance for people to take responsibility. It's like this game that gets played where we'll just keep dodging the truth.
Yeah. So we talked about mentoring men, Kintsugi Heroes. Do you have any new projects on the horizon?
Well, I've got some big dreams. When I grew up, I grew up in a village, and Paul, we didn't have a telephone. That's an example. But Mrs. Ryan, 3 houses down, had a telephone. So if we wanted to make a call, we would take 6pence, 5 cents for the. And we'd take it down, you leave it by the phone and you would make a call. And then if there was a phone call for us, we'd leave Mrs. Ryan's number and she'd come up and tell us there was a phone call. We would know all the neighbours or the adults around the area, and the kids would all get out and play. It was a true village. In fact, I saw this time-lapse cartoon recently. And in the first cartoon, there's a mum by the front door, and she's got the little boy by the ear. He's got a ball under his arm, and she's trying to drag him inside. And I related this. Mum would say, go out and play. When the street lights come on, you've got to come inside. So you'd be out physically active with your mates, playing football or cricket or whatever. The latest cartoon shows a fatter kid. This time he's inside the house, Mum's by the front door, trying to drag him out, and he's holding onto his gaming console. So we've lost that ability to have that village connection. I want to reestablish that. And one way, like one of the projects we did with Kintsugi Heroes was connecting seniors to help address loneliness and isolation. And we ran a Kintsugi workshop for them. We captured their stories, we published books, we ran events, we ran multicultural dinners. I know that audio can't pick this up, but a few weeks ago we ran an art of conversation workshop. We brought seniors in and we went through the process, and that was fantastic fun. So one of my dreams is that nationwide, every fortnight or whatever, in the local community centre, local library, a group of people would get together and listen to and share stories. And there'd be a facilitator there. And part of that, I'm being involved with peer support groups, mentoring men. Incredibly powerful. There'd also be a check-in opportunity. Doug, how you doing? Last week you said this, how's that situation? How did, and as that group gets to build trust and all that, there'd be encouraged vulnerability. And Doug might say, look, to be honest, I'm struggling at the moment. And then there'd be empathy around that. So that's one of the things. Let's reestablish the village. Let's get people connected.
And is that just targeted at the older population? No?
No, every year a loneliness report comes out. All they do is produce the report. They measure loneliness, and the overall rates are increasing. One of the surprises and incredibly sad aspects, the last report I saw, it was relatively even levels of loneliness and isolation across all the age demographics. The biggest one was 18 to 24. I talked about as a kid, that score would have been much higher with physical. I mean, there's definite relationship between physical exercise and mental health. We were doing all this stuff, and I think there's a number of aspects of food we eat, more processed. There's a whole bunch of other stuff there. But what's going on with that? And I'm guessing it's social media that, like, most people get involved in some organised sport or whatever, that those rates are dropping off. That age group would probably go attend in-person universities or whatever college. Now there's a lot more people doing that online. So we're losing that ability to have these conversations. So this could be, and it makes sense not to have these events just for one age demographic. You look overseas in Scandinavia, they have the multi-generational. Like my wife's half Italian. They would have the mum, I forget what they call them, but the mum, nonna or whatever, would come in and would live with them. My daughter and three grandkids here at the moment. But it's that we're losing. I want to reestablish that. And there's there's been programs where students have gone into old people's homes and they start to hear the stories, and it's incredibly beneficial. Psychologist, I was on a panel with her, Susan Gronanane. She did that program on TV, old age people with young kids. And the benefit was brilliant. There was a win-win. The old people's physical capability, their mental capability, their happiness in life increased. The young kids, every aspect increased as well. So
I'm pretty sure I saw that or something very like it, and it went on for once a week or whatever they would meet, and they paired them up, like an older person to a young. Yeah, it was a brilliant show. Yeah,
that was Sue Cool, I think was the name of the person. So and they did it. They increased the ages. So why don't we get more of those events happening? And so there's some dreams around that. What I've seen on this journey as well, I've got high levels of empathy. And I was talking to this incredible woman, Mia Bannister, in Queensland a couple of weeks ago, whose son suicided, and she set up a charity, Ollie's Echo. She was one of the key lobbyists because he was being bullied through social media, was to uh, 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 lobby the government to have the ban on social media. And we can have different thoughts on whether that is a good thing or a bad thing, but the fact was she was doing this. So I want to do a series around loss of a child. I want to do a series around cancer journeys. We'll do a series around men about to become dads for the first time. There's a lot of support for women, but not much support for men. And women go through a whole bunch of physical, mental, emotional. It's like men, there's a baby. and it's like things change. They'll never be the same again. And we'll do Indigenous stories, gender diversity stories. So it's okay. I want to do all these things, and how do you manage all that and get funding and support for all that? So, but that's So they're the dreams that I want to do.
Yeah. And as we've been talking now for 45 minutes, like I've been experiencing your highs and lows, like emotions for me. I've been on the edge of a tear coming out of my eye a couple of times. So I can only imagine this last 12 years for you has been so radically different to your prior years, 40 years of work, like with the emotions. And so some people would see that as, oh, I couldn't handle all that. But it's so, I'm sure, fulfilling, or whatever the word is. Yeah, satisfying.
Yeah. I've got a vivid memory. So I spent probably 3 months in hospital last year. Metastasized melanoma, brain tumors and tumors in other parts of my body. I went on immunotherapy, and I went on what the first round didn't work. They put me on what they call the sledgehammer, and I got the worst case of colitis they'd seen. I was going to the toilet 20 times a day. I dropped 20 kilos in 6 weeks. And what I didn't realize, I lost the ability to walk properly. So I was riding 150 kilometers a week on my bike. And now around the hospital, I needed to get a walker, to get around. And you think, wow, that's tough. I remember being in the shower. I had a few falls, holding on to these bars with the hot water running over me, crying with gratitude. I can't explain it. But for the hot water, for the hospital, the medical system we have in Australia. And that attitude continued on all the way through that. I got out of hospital. I've been through rehab. I can now walk a few kilometres, and I'm riding over 100 k's a week at the moment. So indoors, I can't ride outdoors. I'd fall off my bike.
Well, and on LinkedIn a month or two ago, you put a post on. Share that one, because I just shook my head when I read that.
So my wife said we love bike riding. I love balance. I've had a few bad falls. And I went down to Melbourne. So I'm based in Sydney. I went to Melbourne to catch up with the Kintsugi Heroes team down there. We had a great catch up. And I said to let's go for a bike ride. I'm not going to ride on the road, but we'll find a safe bike trail. And we knew a few of them before. So we went down to Wonthaggi, and there's a beautiful trail. You ride from Wonthaggi, which is down on the Bass Coast, through Kilcunda and up into the hills. And you cross the road, but the rest of it's on a wide bike track. But along that track, because there's farms, and they put a fence across the track for the livestock to go through, and they have a narrow gate. And I say narrow. Any reasonable cyclist should be able to ride through that without falling off. But anyway, I rode through, hit this steel post on one side. It broke my finger, and I heard my ribs crack. I thought it was one, but it turned out to be two. And my wife was in front. She'd ridden through the gate, and I stopped and cried out in pain. And then I've got this weird thing when I'm feeling nauseous, I have something bad happen, I stop breathing. I jumped out of an aeroplane once, same thing happened. I passed out. Anyway, another story. So she knows what's going to go on. So she got me to lie down, and then I just collapsed and stopped breathing. It's only temporary, and then your body, amazing, kicks in. She put me in the recovery position, and I don't know why. She took a photo of me, spread eagle, in the recovery position, and I put it on LinkedIn, and like 80,000 people, uh, uh, 80,000 impressions. I said to the team, "Oh, look, we want to build our media profile. I need to injure myself every week." But it was, yeah. So that slowed me down a bit. I haven't ridden. Actually, I rode the next day at another track. I'm very determined, but I haven't ridden outside since. I won't ride on the roads in Sydney; just too dangerous. But I've got an indoor bike at near Strava and Swift, right around the world. So that's the goal. But I'm planning, at the rate I'm improving, probably in 2 or 3 months' time, I'll be game enough to get back outside and ride outside again.
But on that day when you did pass out and your wife took the photo of you, did you get back on the bike and finish the ride?
We weren't even halfway. And she said, "Well, I'll call an ambulance." No, it's only turned out a couple of broken ribs. But I got back on, rode as far as you can ride to the end of the trail, this Woolamai, and then turned around and came back. But each time we came into one of those gates, I'd stop, get off the bike. So my time was terrible. Like you pick up, I'm incredibly competitive, and the time was appalling. But I got back unscathed. Yeah.
So you're still living.
I'm still living, loving life. And I said, we did this party, staying alive. I hate the Bee Gees, that era of the Bee Gees music, but it was, I was up on stage. I made a speech, but my son cued, and we had staying alive. My wife's up there on the stage doing the dance. Everyone's going crazy. And it just shared a bit of the journey, and hopefully with a bit of humour. And yeah, it was great. Life is good.
All right. So a lot of people have heard you on podcasts and hear you talk, and they, your story. And I'm hearing more today than I've heard on any others, which is great. But can you tell us one thing about you that most people wouldn't know? Nothing too private or anything like that, but what's something just, people who've known you for years, and you might say, well, da-da-da-da, and they might go, wow, I never knew that about Ian.
I know this. With Kintsugi Heroes is collaborating with a Sydney-based organisation to run a talent quest for seniors on Easter Saturday, and I've learned so much from these projects we're doing, and this is to encourage seniors to show some of their talent, to whether it be art or poetry or music or whatever. And yesterday I put an entry in to do a stand-up comedian thing at the event in Annandale in Sydney. Now I think I've got a GSOH. My kids and another dad joke and all, but I'm going to give it a crack. So I've never, I've made, as the journey's gone on, I've made a lot of speeches. I made one the other day. So I'm going to get up and hopefully be a friendly audience. So I've got some jokes in mind. Actually, you were talking about fake news the other day. I sent a joke over to America about 12 months ago, one of the talk shows. And I've got to remember that. But I thought they'd send me back some money, but they didn't. But it was, what's that? The White House have advised that wolves wearing sheep outfits on the White House gardens, they found out it was only fake news. Like, but I don't know if Americans understand what a ewe is and what but anyway, you can probably understand no money came back and nothing happened with it. But anyway, fake ewes.
Right. So you're going to try your hand at stand-up comedy? Like
I am. I've done now. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. Yeah. So hopefully it'll be a friendly audience. But yeah. So if anyone's in the Annandale Yeah, I've got a few funny jokes. People laugh. So, yeah.
And your wife will be there to video it? Or?
Yeah, there's people. I put a post up on social media yesterday, and people around that I've got interstate and even overseas is, I wish we were there. But the trouble is, if she videos it, I won't be able to control what she does with it.
Well, rather than video it, she could just live stream it. That would be even better. So you don't get the chance to get a phone and delete it.
It's funny. She's a real hoot. Like, we've had obviously all the 21st, the 18th, and you're probably old enough to remember the Three Stooges.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So at one of the kids' parties, there was, I think it was Larry or Curly, would get down on the floor and go in a circle on his side. Yep. She did that like she's a dancer, and the kids just went crazy. Like, they thought it was hilarious.
This was at your party?
Yeah, no, not at one of the kids' 21st or 18th party we had at our place. And I mean, our kids were embarrassed, but all their friends thought this is really cool. Here's the mother or grandmother on the floor going round and round in circles. So she could do that. So yeah.
So if she can do that, you can do stand-up comedy for the first time live streamed.
Lives.
You can do this as a fundraiser. Like, you chip in $5 and you get the code to watch Ian live stream.
Well, I love how and Kintsugi Heroes could do for some money, but yeah.
So there you go. There's a fundraiser in it as well. Yeah, we'll milk it for everything we can get.
Great idea.
Yeah, and what have you got to lose? Yeah, nothing. Yeah.
But there's a lot of power and vulnerability. It's a superpower. And I remember with Mentoring Men, we ran a 2-day workshop which helped men identify the skills most of them already had. And I was the founder and CEO, but I didn't develop the workshop. This other guy did. In fact, the guy who told me the name Kintsugi. And I saw on the second day of the workshop, he had this talking circle. And when I looked at it, I thought, this is going to suck. I don't want to do this. So the rules and these are incredibly powerful. The talking circle, so you've got a group of people. We're fortunate. This is the second day where trust had been built. People knew each other, but a lot of activities. But in a talking circle, there's an object that's handed around. So there's like glue stick there. And the rules are, it's given to someone and you share what you're feeling, not thinking, what you're feeling. If you want to pass, you just say pass and give it to the next person. And the rule is no one interrupts, no one comments. You just share what's going on in you emotionally. And I thought, this is totally different to the corporate environment you put on the facade. And to be honest, I didn't want to do it. Even though I'm the founder, I thought I would probably have said pass. The very first guy, I miss my dad. He starts talking about his dad had passed away, the relationship he had with his dad. Next person, I can't get access to my kids. My mum gambled away a house. And then by the time it got to me, there were tears, but there was support and all that sort of stuff. And that ability to be yourself, whether it be a stand-up comedian or something else, with people, I guess in this case, it was people you know and people you trust and all that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of power in that. Rip off the facade. And yeah, I think I'm funny. We'll soon find out.
If you decide this is a new career path for you, I can send you a link. I've had a gentleman on the podcast before who, for a living, teaches improv comedy online. He's in Los Angeles. And great guy, really good guy. And yeah, it's what he does for a living. And he was doing it. But then when COVID hit, he started teaching online a lot more. And he does do it live, obviously. Yeah. But so he brings, so like I've got the contacts there for you. And if you want to, how long away is another week or two?
Yeah, Saturday week is the 4th of.
You might be able to get a couple of online lessons in before you go.
I've seen this really old guy on the internet, and he makes all these jokes about age, and one of them, like, is it you have your soul animal? And he said, my soul animal is extinct. Something like that.
Actually, now I'm just thinking about it. He does do improv comedy, but what they do as well is 3 or 4 of them will stand on the stage with the audience, and the audience will yell out like 3 random words that don't go together. And like 60 seconds later, these 3 or 4 actors improv just start doing a skit where they haven't even collaborated. One of them will just start talking about one of those 3 words, and they have to bring those 3 random words into the whole skit, and so for the next 5 or 10 minutes, they're doing this, and there's rules. You can't put anyone down. It's got to be uplifting to, you can't put anyone in a compromising situation. But, if I started, I might pretend that you're a police sergeant, and you're like, and you have to get the gist that you're a police sergeant from what I just said. And then you have to, it's on the fly. Yeah. And so they get a lot of people just like gobsmacked, cannot believe that there was no pre-collaboration on how it was going to flow.
Like that's probably two. I'm doing 101. Did you want to hear one of the jokes?
Go for it.
Okay. So there's this mum trying to encourage her son to eat the broccoli that's on his plate, and he just refuses. He pushes and pushes, and he's about 6 years old. He said, "Mum, I hate broccoli. It smells terrible. I'm never going to eat it." And she gives up. The dad goes over and whispers something in the son's ear. He scoffs all the broccoli down, asks for some more. Mum dishes up more, and he eats all that as well. And then the son goes off to do his homework, and the mum says to the dad, "What did you say to him?" And he said, I told him if he eats his broccoli, his penis will grow longer." And she just whacks him across the face really hard. And he said, "Why did you do that?" And she said, "Because you never ate your broccoli when you were young."
That'll work. That'll get a laugh. That'll work. Yeah. Is that your opener?
Oh, I don't know. I've got through. I don't know how long I've got. Like the main focus is these. In fact, I've seen some of the entries already. Incredible art. Like there's so many talented people out there. They're writing poems. They're singing songs, and they're paintings and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully, mine is light relief to that. But we'd like. I mean, imagine this. So this is this is the second year of this. But imagine something like this all around Australia. I've got some other big dreams around this place, but maybe let's save it for another podcast. But I want to get the communities back together again, reestablish, get people talking, supporting. That's where we want to head.
Yeah, and out where I live, like we're a little bit, where everyone's on acreage, and there's a Facebook sort of group. And the last year or so, I haven't been on it that much because when you go on Facebook, you don't see the posts anymore. You just see ads all the time. But yeah, it's a very community orientated sort of thing, and people get together. Like I remember when the Commonwealth Games were on, when the cycle racing was on, it was on our road, and we're like at a dead end road. So for the day, all the residents at the end of the road were blocked off from the world, like there was nowhere to go. So one of the guys sort of came on and said, "Well, who wants to get together for a barbecue? Because none of us can go to work. We can't do anything because we're excluded from the world for the day." So it was just, oh yeah, okay. So people just all got together, but only because something like that happened. And then also too, when we get massive storms around here, we get landslips and stuff, and we get blocked in for a couple of days sometimes before the floodwaters go down, and the council can come with their front end loaders and get rid of a metre of mud off the road. But it's great, like, because we're prepared for it, we know it's likely to happen. We have plenty of food, and everyone's got that, and everyone shares, and people just drive around to each other's houses, and because there's no electricity, so you can't ring anybody, so people just turn up at people's houses. And we're back to 40 years ago, where we lived overseas until 8 or 9 years ago on a tiny little island in the middle of nowhere, And when we were preparing to come back, our adult children were starting to prepare my wife and I for life back in Australia. And there were rules. Dad, you do not ring people. You text them first, and then you ring. And then if they're available, they ring. You do not go to people's houses without them knowing you're coming. Like all these different things. And we're like, oh, because we'd been overseas for like 15 years. And they've gone, the world's changed. You've been back to Australia for a week or two at a time. And, you've been busy and you've been seeing all the family and everyone's ready waiting for you. But, and it's like, oh, so we had to adjust, and, well, because we were told it's just not, you just don't do these random things. Do not lob up at our house without pre-texting that you're coming and us approve, and it was just, and I've sort of found that's how life is now. It had evolved while we were away. And when we were living on this tiny little island, we didn't even have internet that worked hardly at all. If you wanted to open a web page, you had to go and make a cup of coffee while it opened. So we were detached from the new life cycle. And so I get why you're wanting to go back to those things, because that's far more fulfilling and purposeful and enjoyable and beneficial to the people involved. The isolation of the texting is not fun at all.
I guess I can understand what your kids were saying. I disagree. I think it's dangerous. There could be someone on their own, but you think maybe they're struggling. There's been there's someone close to them has died and they're grieving. You ring them, they mightn't answer the phone. They're not going to answer a text. But if you just turn up on the doorstep with a meal or some donuts or something, and it's okay, and it could be, oh, look, thought you're hungry, here's some food, and you go away. Or you probably find they then invite you in, and that could be a really important conversation. So, I've got concerns about this thing. We're only going to, none of these impromptu things. So I horses for courses. I look at the events. Sometimes like it makes sense. I'm a planner. Okay, let people know when all that. But there'd be other cases where that could have serious consequences if you follow those rules.
Yeah. Well, I guess they were just sort of trying to be caring that, you don't want to offend people, because people have changed how they communicate now. And it's like, oh, okay, this is random and different. And I remember when we first got married, my mum would lob up once or twice a week about 7 a.m. And sometimes we'd be, fortunately, we lived sort of halfway down a hill and she had squeaky brakes. And we would hear it, and if we were both still in bed, we'd look at each other and go, oh boy, mum's here. And we could jump out and get dressed,
Everyone loves Raymond, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like you're talking about with telephones too before, I remember when I was 16, I've got a brother who's 12 years older, and he was backpacking around Europe at the time. Well, we didn't have a phone. So he would ring the neighbor and then hang up and say, I'll ring back in, can you get mum? And I'll ring back in 5 minutes. So she would yell out off the balcony, Rita, like your son's going to ring back in a minute from Iceland. So we would run over there and sort of sit there and wait for the phone to ring again. And then, the big delays, and that sort of thing in the calls. But yeah, I think I had my first job, and I said to mum when I was about 16, I said, if I pay for half the phone, can we get one, please? So, because I remember sometimes she'd be sick and couldn't go to work, and she'd hand me a piece of paper and a 10-cent coin, and it was a phone number, and I'd have to get on my bike and ride up to the phone box and ring her boss and say, my mum's too sick to come to work today. And one of them, she used to clean houses. One of the people she cleaned the house, he was a doctor. So I'd have to ring before 7 and say, this is Rita's son and she's sick and she wants to know if you can come and visit her on the way to work because she's really sick. And he would. He was very, very good like that. Yeah, but yeah, I'm riding on. We didn't have the phone.
The public phones, of course, had the A and B buttons back then, and you press the B, I think, to get your money back. We had at that time, no phone, outside dunny. I don't know if it sounds gross. There were 6 of us in the family, and the dunny was you would just outside toilet, pan empty once a week. Like, anyway, just grosses me out. We never had a fridge. There used to be an ice box, so there'd be an ice man would come down with a block of ice each week, and you'd have a thing called a meat safe. So you put the meat in this tin cabinet, which had vents on it, and I don't know how, but the meat wouldn't go off. It would last. So, yeah, you look at the well we've got now, but the kids, the people are happy back then. Like, it's there was lots more, all the social interaction, which happens a lot less in a lot of the neighbourhoods we're in.
Yeah, I remember the baker delivering the bread, and Mum would say, "Get 1.5 loaves," and I loved it when we got a half loaf because he would tear it in half. And as I was walking it back into the house, all the fresh, standard was there, and you'd pick it out and eat it. And Mum would be yelling out from the top of the stairs, "Stop picking at that bread!" Yeah,
the milk deliveries. There was a horse and cart, and the horse, what do you call, like a Drysdale thing? It would just go the same slow pace. He'd be running with the bottles back then, and
yeah. So I'm 9 years younger than you, so I missed some of that. But our neighbour, poor lady, she was in her 70s in a 2-story house, and only upstairs was livable, downstairs was just dirt. And she had an outside toilet, like into her 70s. So she would have to come in winter down the stairs into the backyard, no electricity in there. Because I remember a few times we'd go over and visit, and I'd go and use it, and I'd be like, "Oh, this is." We had an inside toilet, but she didn't. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. A bit of sawdust there to sort of throw on top of it. And the guy coming around once a week with his fresh black bucket to swap it over. Yeah.
And he'd put it on his head. He'd have a Cobra hat, and he'd put the thing on, and I never saw it. The story was one of the pans had rusted out through the bottom, and his head went. Well, I don't know how we got here, no, but
yeah. It's evolved. So another question I've got for you, probably haven't been asked this one hardly at all, but I personally in my life have overcome a lot of fears, and I do have a lot of fears, and I recognize them. I'm just curious, what's your biggest fear?
As a kid, it used to be dying, fear of death. Interestingly, how that's progressed. I went through stages of fearing that no one would want me. This was as a teenager. Who'd want to marry me, sort of thing, and so they were like real fears there that helped drive lack of confidence. So I had an older brother. He was a bit mean, passed away now, but he would tell me, "Oh, you're so ugly, you must take ugly pills." There was all this sort of stuff that I guess brothers can say, but I was a sensitive kid. And so there's a bunch of things like that. But now, no, I've got a healthy fear of don't go out and ride your bike outside on the road because a car might hit you because you're going to fall off. I can't. I can take the drink bottle out on the bike, but I can't put it back in. When I look down to put it back in, I go almost at right angles to the right. So it's like it'd be nuts. So I guess there's a sane fear, but I don't honestly can't think of any fears that I've got now. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, and I relate to the one of being a teenager and thinking I'm never going to have a girlfriend, because out of my group of friends, I pretty much was definitely the last one to ever have a girlfriend.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me like I would never get one. But my first date was actually on my 16th birthday. And now you would think, well, gee, that was very young. But at the time, it seemed like I was an old man, because at 14, all my friends were starting to have girlfriends, and for a week or 3 weeks, but at least they'd had the experience of it. And I was so ridiculously afraid of rejection, particularly from a girl, because I knew if I got rejected once, I probably would never be game to try again.
Yeah.
And my mate actually asked out this girl. And he knew that I'd been watching her from afar for months. He he already was the right girl to ask out. And so he went and asked her out, said, hey, how about you come out on a double date tonight for Doug? It's his birthday. So off we go. And I was very angry at him, but extremely happy with him that he did it, but angry that he'd sort of overstepped that mark, but very thankful. And then we sort of went out and she was still 15, I was 16, and we went at Broadbeach here on the Gold Coast. There was a nightclub. We went there, and in those days they let us in. So we got in there and sort of sat, and then she kissed me. I'm just like, and we are still together today.
Wow.
I've never asked a girl out. My mate did it. She kissed me. I was like over the moon. And see, I was too scared to ask her.
Yeah.
But once there was no rejection, there was obviously, I'm not going to get rejected for trying to kiss her because she was kissing me. I was hooked and like, boom, you couldn't stop me kissing her then. And yeah, but those fears are phenomenal things in our lives that you look at. Yeah.
So my wife initiated the contact with me. So I played a lot of squash. I used to play state grade squash, and she was a state grade player as well. And I used to import squash rackets as one of the businesses on the site. A whole lot of other stories there. But she rang me to see if she could get a squash racket. And we decided we'd go and have a game of squash together. And then from there, we just non-stop going out. And I think 6 weeks later, I asked her to marry me. And she said no. And I just kept asking until she lowered her standards. And then that was 42 years ago, 43 coming up.
Yeah. That you got together or got married?
We got married. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're 41 and a half years, but yeah, because we were both 20 when we got married. Yeah. Yeah. But we'd been going out for 4.5 years. So we did know each other, but yeah. Wonderful.
Things have changed.
Yeah. So I've loved our conversation. For the men listening, we've talked about some synchronistic moments where these invisible benevolent forces have been dropping things on your lap or shining a light on things to highlight in a way that you're going to grasp it. And we've talked about the benefits that you've experienced in your life. Is there before we wind up, I will have your contact details in the show notes. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to mention?
No, I've gone the other way, Doug. We've talked about a whole bunch of things I didn't know we were going to talk about, from outside dunnies to our first dates and all that sort of stuff. But it's been great. I love the style. It's incredibly relaxed, just a couple of blokes chatting about thoughts and history and things like that. So thank you.
That's why it's called Intuitive Conversations with Doug. Yeah. And that's what started out. Just like my kids, actually, it's been going for 4+ years. Probably about 8 years ago, my boys started saying to me, Dad, you have to start a podcast. You love talking.
Can I finish on a true story that was funny? We met some Americans on a cruise, and they invited us to come back and stay with them in Montana. And they then took us around. They drove us around to all the national parks and all the highlights around that area, beautiful area in the States, although they've got some racial issues and all that sort of stuff there. Anyway, we finish up. We walk down this sidewalk, and there's someone got hung there. Like, it's one of the oldest towns. He was shot here. We finish up in the saloon for lunch, and on the menu they've got one of the things out there was Cornish pasties, straight. And I said, well, what are your Cornish pasties like? And the waitress said, oh, good. And so I ordered one, and then she came back after the meal. Well, what did you think of our Cornish pasties? I said, oh, they're just like my mum used to make. Oh, wow, that is so kind of you to say that. I said, not really. My mum was a terrible cook. And Americans love Australian accents. They love the sense of humour. The whole, people had all been listening to this, and just, it was a very very funny, funny situation. So let's finish on we'll go from Dunnies to a funny, true but funny story.
There's another joke for you for Saturday week. Yeah, excellent. How many jokes are you going to tell?
I don't know. I'd have to check with the time frame. But I got 4 or 5 ones. That was like a true story, but I guess it's funny. So I can tell that as well. So.
Yeah. The broccoli one you mean before was a true story?
No. Unfortunately, we couldn't afford broccoli when I was a kid.
All right, Ian. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Great chatting. See you.
Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.